I found men's lubricant in my wife's bag. I didn't make a fuss. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even let my face change. I just stood there in our bedroom with that little silver tube in my hand, feeling my stomach go cold in a way that had nothing to do with air conditioning. Because when you've been married long enough, you learn the difference between coincidence and a pattern. And for months, my life had been one long pattern of late meetings, team dinners, and I'm exhausted. Can we just sleep? Her name was Marissa. We'd been together 9 years, married for 6, no kids yet, mostly because we kept saying next year like it was a real plan and not an excuse to avoid conversations that felt heavy. That Tuesday night, she'd taken her second shower of the day. That was what pulled my attention in the first place. Marissa wasn't exactly a 2 showers person. She was a quick rinse if I have to person. But lately she'd become meticulous, like someone trying to wash off more than sweat. The shower was still running when I noticed her bag on the chair unzipped, half spilled open, like it had been dumped in a rush. I wasn't trying to snoop. I told myself I was cleaning. A good husband tidies. A good husband helps. A good husband doesn't assume the worst. But when my hand brushed that cold metal tube, everything in me paused. It wasn't something you'd mistake for lip balm. It looked expensive, minimalist, foreign. Japanese characters printed clean and bold against the silver. I pulled out my phone, scanned the text with a translation app, and watched the words appear like a verdict. Premium men's personal lubricant. Long-lasting formula. Men's. Not for couples. Not sensitive. Not anything that sounded like it belonged in the same house as me. I stood there holding it, trying to invent a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a gag gift. Maybe she was holding it for a friend. Maybe I was spiraling. Then I noticed her tablet on the desk, screen still glowing. She'd left it on, which she never did. Her home screen was organized into neat folders with cute names, but one folder stood out like a lie trying to dress up as normal. Groceries. Marissa hated grocery shopping. She hated lists. She hated apps. Yet there it was. I tapped it. Inside was one generic-looking messaging app I'd never seen before. No obvious logo, no bright colors, just blank, designed to be overlooked. My thumb hovered for a full minute because I knew what this was. I didn't have proof yet, but I had a sense of direction, like stepping onto ice and already feeling it bend under your weight. I opened the app. A chat thread sat at the top with one name, Leo, no profile picture, just a shadow silhouette. And the messages? They weren't romantic. They weren't cute. They were logistics, plans, casual certainty. Thursday, same place. Bring the silver one. Don't worry, he'll be out early. Text me when you're on your way. I scrolled up and it got worse. Not explicit, but unmistakable. Hotel confirmations, a photo of a room key card on a counter, a screenshot of a map with a pin dropped at a downtown address. Message timestamps that aligned perfectly with nights she'd told me work ran late. I didn't feel like a man discovering something new. I felt like a man finally seeing what he'd been refusing to name. The shower shut off. I heard her humming, like she lived in a world where consequences were for other people. I stared at the tube again, then at the messages, then back to the tube, and something in me went very quiet. Not rage, not panic, clarity. I walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer where I kept random tools and supplies, and pulled out a tube of industrial super glue I'd used on a broken cabinet hinge a month earlier. Strong enough to hold anything together permanently. Strong enough to make a point without throwing a punch. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I emptied the lubricant tube carefully into the sink, rinsed it, dried it, and filled it with the glue like I was performing surgery. I sealed it the way it had been sealed, wiped it clean, and put it back exactly where I found it in her bag. No dramatic speech, no scene. Just one small change to a lie she thought she controlled. When she came into the room, towel wrapped around her, she smiled at me with that practiced warmth. "Hey, babe," she said, and I noticed how her voice had that extra sweetness, like a layer of frosting meant to cover something stale underneath. "You okay?" she asked, touching my arm lightly. "I'm fine," I said. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Long day, I'm wiped." "Yeah," I said. "Get some rest." She slid into bed and turned away from me almost immediately. I lay there listening to her breathe, waiting. Not because I wanted to catch her in the act. but because I wanted to confirm what kind of person she'd become when she thought no one was watching. An hour passed, then another. Finally, she moved. Quiet, careful, like she'd practiced. She slipped out of bed, opened her closet, and pulled out a dress she hadn't worn for me in years. Black, sleek. The kind of outfit you choose when you want someone to look at you like you're a prize. She did her makeup with clinical focus, checked her phone twice, and at exactly 12:47 a.m., she slipped out the front door. I waited 10 seconds, then followed. Not running, not stomping, just moving with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. I stepped into the hallway and saw them near the elevator. Leo was taller than me, younger, clean haircut, the posture of a man who walked through doors like they belonged to him. He leaned in close and kissed her like it was routine, like I was a detail. They walked toward the stairwell instead of the elevator, and that's when it clicked. He wasn't picking her up. He lived here. I followed at a distance, feeling something heavy settle deeper inside my chest. They went up one floor, fourth floor, end of the hall, apartment 4C, right above us. That's the part that almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so lazy, so bold, like they were daring the universe to do something about it. His door shut. I stood in the hallway staring at the number on the door, listening to muffled voices behind cheap wood and thinner morals. I didn't hear details. I didn't need them. What I heard was enough. Comfort, familiarity, the tone of two people who believed they were safe. Then came the first moment of confusion. A pause. A sharper voice. Something like, "Wait!" Then panic started leaking into the hallway like smoke. "Stop! Don't!" "What is that? Something's wrong. Why isn't it?" And then the line that made my mouth go dry. We can't separate." Silence followed, then frantic movement. Running water, a cabinet door slamming, the sound of someone whispering too fast. I stayed where I was, leaning against the wall, because I didn't want to imagine the details. I just wanted to know the outcome. 10 minutes later, I heard Leo's voice, tight, strained, saying words that should never exist in the same sentence as adultery. "Call an ambulance." A few minutes after that, the elevator dinged and opened on the fourth floor. Two paramedics stepped out, carrying equipment, speaking in that professional tone people use when they're trying not to react. I slipped down the stairs before anyone saw me. Back in my apartment, I stood behind the door and watched through the peephole like I was watching someone else's life unfold. The elevator dinged again. The doors opened. And there they were, covered in a sheet, pushed on one stretcher, two sets of legs visible at awkward angles, the paramedics trying to keep their faces neutral. But the neighbors? Neighbors are not trained professionals. Doors cracked open. Phones came out. Mrs. Patterson from 3B, the woman who somehow knew everyone's business before it became business, was filming like she'd just discovered gold. The stretcher rolled out, and just before the elevator doors closed, I saw Marissa's face under the edge of the sheet, eyes wide, pale, not seductive anymore, terrified. The doors shut, and the hallway went quiet again. I went back inside, sat at the kitchen table, and poured myself a glass of water like my hands weren't shaking. I didn't feel victorious. I felt done. Because the truth is, the glue wasn't my real revenge. The glue was proof. If she could walk out on me, sneak upstairs and treat our marriage like an inconvenience, then she deserved to feel, just for one night, what it was like to lose control. She came home the next morning around 10, moving like every step hurt. Her hair was messy. Her face looked washed out. She changed clothes, but she couldn't change the smell of panic that followed her through the door. "Hey," she said weakly. I looked up from my coffee. "Morning." She blinked like she expected more. Accusation, anger, something. Instead, I asked, "Rough night?" She swallowed. "Yeah, work stuff. Work stuff." I nodded slowly. "You should rest." Her eyes locked onto mine for a second, searching for something, maybe guilt, maybe suspicion, maybe fear that I knew. Then her phone buzzed. She flinched. That flinch told me everything. She moved toward the bedroom and I watched her go, thinking about the tablet, the messages, the months of lies. I didn't confront her that day. I didn't need to. Instead, I did something calm people do when they finally reach the end of their patience. I documented everything: screenshots, dates, times, addresses. The messages that matched her late meetings, I emailed them to myself, backed them up, printed them. And when she came out later, trying to act normal, trying to stitch the world back into place with a smile, I looked at her and realized something that surprised me. I didn't hate her. I didn't even love her anymore. I just saw her. That evening, she tried to touch my arm, tried to slip into bed like nothing had happened. I turned slightly away. "What's wrong?" she asked. I kept my voice flat. "Nothing. Just tired." She stared at me, and for a second I saw fear again. The kind of fear that comes when a person realizes the story they've been telling might not be working anymore. 2 days later, I met with a lawyer. A week after that, I filed. When I served her papers, she cried like she was the victim. She said she didn't mean it. She said it wasn't serious. She said Leo was nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't explain the glue. I just asked one question. If he was nothing, why did you risk everything for him? She didn't answer. In court, the messages did. I got the apartment. The accounts were separated. The split was clean because I had what mattered: proof of a pattern, proof of deception, proof that she wasn't leaving out of confusion. She was leaving because she thought she could have two lives and never pay for either one. A month after the divorce, I ran into Mrs. Patterson at the mailbox. She leaned in like she couldn't help herself. "So, are you ever going to tell me what happened that night?" I looked at her for a second, then smiled politely. "No," I said, "but I think the ambulance told the story pretty clearly." I walked back inside my apartment. My apartment closed the door and felt a quiet peace settle over me. People always talk about revenge like it's fireworks, like it's loud, like it's dramatic. But the best kind isn't loud at all. The best kind is when someone finally learns that the life they were taking for granted isn't guaranteed to wait for them. And the moment they lose control, they realize what you already knew. Some choices don't come with second chances. They come with consequences that stick.